All right, so today we have to talk about what I would consider to be the most compelling evidence we've seen so far that suggests that Nintendo is indeed planning to bring GameCube Games support to Nintendo Switch Online, likely as a Switch 2 console exclusive. There are some reasons for this. In a recent FCC filing, not just random patents that may or may not ever come to fruition, but rather Nintendo going through and testing a product with the FCC to ultimately bring to market and release, with some specific giveaways that make it very obvious that this is for Switch 2, and it does line up with some prior reports that we have covered on this channel months and months back, where shipping data was spotted suggesting that GameCube controller components were being freshly produced for the first time. And while this could just be another wave of GameCube controller support that's getting released for Nintendo Switch 2 for maybe a new Smash Bros game or something of that sort, one thing that Nintendo has done with every home console system they have added into Nintendo Switch Online so far is, of course, produce that home console's controller, and we see them show up ahead of time in filings exactly like this. So we're going to break down all of the exact info that's been spotted. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to first start off right over at Family Boards, where you can see the following post, which kind of does a really nice job breaking all of this down, where you can see originally found by LIC in the hardware thread, posting this info as its own thread with permission. It seems that Nintendo attempts to obscure their upcoming NSO controllers in their FCC filings may have been foiled once again by their rather distinctive shapes. The FCC filing for this controller shows a rather unusual label position on the lower left of the rear of the device, and you can first see the exact filing that is outlined here, the label in question that is mentioned right here. And of course, you know, we're living in the internet times, people deep dive this stuff, and you can see, but if you overlay it with the back of a wired GameCube controller, it's a pretty exact match with the label position on the back of the C stick, imaged by LIC. And you can just see basically straight up that if you took a GameCube controller and outlined it to a very similar box that this FCC filing shows, that yes, you would have that distinctive label line up almost perfectly with how Nintendo did it with the GameCube controller. Continuing on down, like the other NSO controllers, it appears to have been reworked into a wireless Bluetooth controller. Unlike the others, it appears to use the Switch 2 model number prefix BEE rather than the Switch 1 prefix, which is HAC, with the full model number being BEE-021. This suggests that the corresponding GameCube NSO service will probably be Switch 2 exclusive, which probably makes sense from a hardware perspective. This doesn't necessarily mean that the controller will fully be incompatible with Switch 1, however, as the two consoles will share an OS. Switch 1 very well might register it as a GameCube controller for games which already support that via the USB adapter, so maybe, just maybe, you can use this for Switch 1 games as well. You may be wondering, could this just be the Switch 2 Pro controller? But there are several details that make that very unlikely, the most compelling of which is that it seems to lack any NFC functionality, something that a Switch 2 Pro controller would almost certainly have. Past precedent suggests we should see an official announcement within a month or so of this filing, so it could even be a part of the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. Now, one thing you might want to know also is that the images for the filing can actually go public in September. That is when they are set to expire. So while I want to say that this will be at something like the Switch 2 Direct, and this is, if you look at the past when we've seen Nintendo file stuff like this, and it does lead to an NSO controller, because we've seen them go through this exact process before ahead of the official reveal and things for upcoming NSO controllers, it probably is at the April Direct, and the September date for the reveal of the filings with the FCC is just pushed way further out than what Nintendo needs. But Nintendo, you might know, historically in September does tend to do big additions to NSO. So far, we've seen them add in Super Nintendo games with the big first expansion of a games library, and then the N64 and Sega Genesis library of games were also added in the September Direct time slot, which I do think is a pretty safe event to expect Nintendo to hold this year. So there is that possibility that if we don't see this featured or revealed at the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, that we just have to wait till September to get this addition with GameCube games coming to Switch 2, but I do believe that it's coming in a big way. And you know, we'll have to see, is it compatible with Switch 1 also? It's possible, but I do actually think Nintendo's going to want to give users some reason to upgrade to a new tier of this service potentially. At the very least, they're going to throw it into expansion pack and make that tier go up, at least for the Switch 2 version of it, whatever that ends up being. I do believe that we're going to be looking at something like $70 annually minimum for an individual membership for the broader access to library of games for NSO. And you know, we might not be stopping at GameCube. We could definitely see this coincide with something else like Sega Dreamcast, maybe the DS base library of games, and now we have that mouse functionality support that is in the Joy-Con that we know is there whenever we turn them over. We have optical mouse sensors that you could do point and click and aim on a touchscreen style layout that's on screen that's being emulated with DS games. Like, these are all very exciting possibilities. But to revisit the likelihood of this being at the Switch 2 April Direct, I think that's actually pretty high, because I am in the mindset, and we've talked about this a lot on the channel, that Nintendo out of the gate wants people to make sure, if they are not already subscribed to NSO, that they are getting a membership for the first time, or if they are subscribed, they are going to re-up or transfer over to this new higher tier of the service. And I think that this makes a lot of sense to feature in the actual Switch 2 April Direct, where we're learning all of the console features, and you have a brief trailer that shows off that GameCube library of games and maybe another system is coming to Nintendo Switch Online, and that will be there day and date available when the console launches, which we might also know a time frame of. We will deep dive this other report that happened while I was on vacation in a separate video, but we got a lot to catch up on. This one I wanted to tackle first because one, I have a absolute love for the GameCube library of games. I absolutely want a wireless GameCube controller just to be able to play for Nintendo Switch 2. I may even use that for games that aren't designed for GameCube, because it's that comfortable of a controller to me. It's one that I've always used in Smash Bros throughout the years, even in the current generation we are in, and obviously a lot of other people do too, because they released a separate USB adapters to allow you to play Smash Bros with a GameCube controller. And to briefly touch on that topic as well, I mean, there is the slightest chance that this is for some kind of special edition Smash Bros Ultimate that comes to Nintendo Switch 2, like a deluxe edition or a brand new Smash Bros game altogether, that Sakurai, we know he's been working on something for a few years or a couple years now. He stated himself, and he's not able to reveal it or talk about it yet. What is that project? Who knows? But obviously Sakurai is very well known at this point in time for the Smash Bros franchise. I just don't believe that Nintendo is going to not add another big console library of systems to Nintendo Switch Online. And like history has shown us, they always release that home console's controller with the system for NSO. So that's likely what we are looking at here. And I'm hoping that this time around, with the GameCube emulation, widescreen support is there with all the titles that support it, no problem, just an easy toggle. Let's hope we're not playing too many GameCube games in 4:3 aspect ratios with no options to expand that or anything. We'll have to see, you know, if this means that maybe less GameCube games that were in the pipeline for remasters end up coming to fruition, because you know, this might unfortunately be, even though it's not exactly the version I want to play them in, this might be how we finally get Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And this could indeed be a reason that Nintendo chose not to port over those Wii U games. They already got remasters that made so much sense for the Nintendo Switch family of systems. Maybe they wanted to keep those as kind of more of a reason for people to upgrade to this higher tier of a subscription service. And we're playing Wind Waker and Twilight Princess in their GameCube versions. Those are two games that would be absolutely huge to tease in the new trailer for GameCube games getting added into NSO, and that is a possibility. It's kind of like how we saw Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask come over as their N64 versions, instead of Nintendo ever choosing to port or re-up-res those 3DS versions that, you know, some people consider to be superior. They definitely are from a visual department. Majora's Mask had some changes in it that, you know, not everybody's a fan of, myself included, but nonetheless, this is a very real possibility. And I do think that at the very least, while we could speculate on the games library for quite a bit longer in this video, I'm going to call it here and hear from you guys at this point. Do you think that, yes, indeed, this is the hard evidence we've been waiting for to see the GameCube is next up on the docket for Nintendo Switch Online? Do you think Nintendo just throws it into the expansion pack at the same price that they are selling it for right now at that $50 annual membership? Or do you think we're looking at a minimum of a $70 jump, or I mean going up to 70 total, I should say, annually for the subscription service? And would you be happy to pay that with something like GameCube library of games and potentially even Dreamcast or DS games being thrown into that mix as well? And do you think we learn about this at the Switch 2 Direct in April, or do you think we will likely be waiting until something like a summertime or September Direct showcase from Nintendo to learn about the expansion of NSO for Switch 2? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.